Today I want to tell you a little bit about Tiny Town. This is a new game by AEG. It is a very simple game. It is a Euro game with a lot of nice looking wooden components, and as the title says, in this game you will be building a tiny town. Each player will be building their own, and it's really tiny. It's a puzzle game because your play area, the area where you can build, will get cluttered very easily, and so you have to make sure that the construction site, so one place, will not prevent you from building something else later. So interesting idea here. Incredibly simple. It can be played in the main version, that I will describe in detail. Then in the conclusions I will also tell you about a variant of the game and about a solitaire variant, and then I'll tell you in general what I think about tiny towns. During the game, players will be building different types of buildings. The blueprints are available in a line of cards that is placed in the middle of the table during setup, like so. There will be 7 buildings available for everybody to build during a game. One of these buildings is always the cottage, so you always have this card on the table. Essentially, we can see that here you have a configuration of different wooden cubes that you will need to provide, you will need to create on your board in order to build this building. And here you have the effect of that building. For example, the cottage will give you 3 victory points if it is fed. That means you also need to build something that feeds buildings. For example, we have the farm. You need 2 brown cubes and 2 yellow cubes in a square configuration like that one. And then you'll be able to feed 4 buildings anywhere on your town. Hooray, up to 4 cottages can be fed. Different buildings have different effects. Also, these buildings will come out of these small decks or sets of 4 cards. There are 4 cards per type of building, and the types are indicated there by those symbols. That means that in each game you will only use 1 of the 4 available buildings for each of these 6 categories, so huge replay value because you will have a lot of different configurations there. Then you have a supply of wooden buildings that are used to represent the different parts of your town as you build it. And finally, well, you have your own town, or at least the possibility of your town, which is a small board, a 4x4 board, such as that one. Actually, there's another type of building and card, which is the monument. You get a monument game piece at the beginning of the game. You also get one of these cards. The monuments are unique buildings, so each player will have the blueprint for a different building, and you keep it secret. You don't show it to other players. Simply whenever you build it, you show that you build it and you place it on your board. But how do you build those buildings, you ask? Well, here it is. You use these cubes here. We have a supply of wooden cubes, and these wooden cubes are in 5 colors. We have brown, teal, reddish, orangish. We haven't decided if it's red or orange just yet. Yellow and gray. They represent different materials like glass or stone, but we call them by their color. The way it works, each turn a player will be the master builder. The master builder will call a color, say gray. Well, everybody picks up a gray cube and everybody has to place it on their board in a square that does not contain other cubes and does not contain other buildings. So in an empty square. Unless something allows you to break that rule, there will be buildings that you build them, you can still place cubes in them for various reasons. Actually, pretty much everything I say here is like, unless there is a specific game effect that allows you to break the rules because effects on the text of the buildings that you build will take precedent over standard rules. Master Builder names a cube, everybody places that cube. Then another player becomes the Master Builder and names a cube, say teal. Another player becomes the Master Builder and names gray. Another player becomes Master Builder and names brown. So Master Builder, role of Master Builder deciding which cube is placed will change, but everybody plays every turn because everybody must place a cube every turn. When you have a configuration on your board that is the same configuration as one of the available buildings, like I have there for theater, The player does not have to build that building. You may choose to wait. You may choose to build several buildings in a single turn if you have the right cubes. However, each cube can only be used once, meaning can only be part of a single building. But you could do that for multiple buildings at the same time. Suppose that this is what I have here. At some point, doesn't even have to be in a turn where I am the master builder, I could replace these 3 cubes with the feast hall and those 4 cubes with a theater. When you replace cubes with a building, so when you're actually building the building, you place it in one of the spaces in which you had cubes originally, and you remove the cubes. We said we were going to build the theater. And then we do so, and we can build it anywhere there. And suppose I want to build it there. There you go. So as the game progresses, there will be different buildings on your board, and at some point you'll get stuck. It will be impossible for you to build new buildings. Every square on your board will have a building or an unused cube. When all players are at a point where you cannot build anymore, then the game is over. Each space where you do not have a building is 1 point of penalty, and buildings will score you points in different ways. For example, the millstone, 2 points, but only if adjacent to one of these buildings. The theater, 1 point, but only based on other buildings in the same row or column. And the temple, 4 points if adjacent to 2 or more fed cottages, because worshippers, I guess, and well-fed worshippers worship better. So, just to give you a sense, there will be different ways of scoring depending on the buildings that are available. You total all of your points, and at that point, the player with the highest score is the winner of the game. So the game also includes a deck of cards that simply represent the resources that you saw. Yellow, reddish, orangish, teal, etc, etc, etc. With that deck of cards, you can play a variant called the Town Hall. You shuffle the cards, if somebody reveals one, and everybody's stuck with that resource. They have to place it on their board. You repeat that, a second card, everybody's stuck with that resource again. Third round, luckily enough, everybody gets to choose whatever they want, any one resource they have. So instead of having a good range of choices every turn, you are swinging between no choice whatsoever, well, you're still choosing where to put it, and larger freedom. Then the solitaire version, similar, you shuffle those cards, you reveal 3 of them, and you need to place one of those resources on your board, you discard it, replenish, so that always 3 are available, and you're trying to score as high as possible. Frankly, I don't see why you couldn't play the Town Hall version in solitaire, because that still limits your agency and so makes it interesting. Anyways, the game has received just semi-mixed responses from my group. No one disliked it actively. Some people found it a little too easy, a little too linear, a little too bland. After they tried it once, they said, it's okay, it wasn't bad, but I don't feel any urge to play it again. Then there was another group of people in my regular group that kept playing it over and over again as we were sitting on the other side of the table and playing something else. So it can definitely have that addictive feel to it, like, why don't we try one more game? I think I can do a little bit better this time. Because it's also very short. Despite the big production, you can definitely play it as a filler. It shares with fillers also the important thing that you can teach it easily, that you can play fast, that it moves fast, and so on and so forth. Now, as for me, I actually liked it. I played all of the different versions, and in different ways, I liked them all. The puzzle element is always there, and it is the most prominent in a sense. It is a game about building that puzzle, about not reducing your opportunities for building something, because if you put some cubes there and then they amount to nothing, then you cannot remove them, then you get stuck and you cannot build something else later. So it is also about pushing your luck a little bit, because well, I would like to build a huge building, but it's sort of like middle of the game. I may not be able to do it. Maybe I'll settle for something less exciting, less interesting. Because once you commit to something, then you cannot remove those cubes unless you build a building. And so maybe you do an ambiguous pattern, something that in fact may then turn out to belong to one building or another, depending on how things go. So there are interesting elements there in how much you commit and when you have to decide, in fact, dang it, I'm going to do this, and I'll stick to it, and I'll try not to regret anything. And so that's an interesting element. Of course, there are also interesting elements when it comes to the synergies, because each game you will have different cars that will do different things. If the building that fits the cottages when they are adjacent to one another, that's one building does, other buildings don't, well, of course, that influences things. If a building gives you the ability to place cubes in the space of the building, sort of like extending the construction site in there, that's a whole different range of possibilities that you have. So interesting elements there. Speaking about the puzzle, something that may not be obvious, when I read the rule book, I thought, oh, multiplayer solo. Which is, and the game is a multiplayer solo if you play the town hall. Then there is no way of affecting what other people get. When you play the standard game, mind you, the game is highly interactive and highly confrontational. Don't be fooled by the cute anthropomorphic animals on the cover, the cute cubes and little buildings. It can get mean when I'm like, you know what, I'm not really gonna build this, but if I put this cube here, it's not gonna be great for me, but it's gonna hurt Frank a lot more. It's gonna hurt that player a lot more. You look around the board, and you can definitely choose cubes that everybody's forced to place on their board, and you can do it just to disrupt another player's plan, which is perfectly legit, but again, it can have a certain emotional intensity that maybe you did not expect, I did not expect from the game. And actually, this idea of messing up with other people is very important because the game doesn't have any luck and doesn't really have a catch-up mechanism. If somebody creates some good buildings early on, people are behind, well, it's very hard for them just running their own parallel race to catch up. It's much easier if people gang up against the leader. So actually there can even be a little bit of negotiation. Hey, look, why don't you call teal, and then I'll call this when it's my turn, so you can build that thing, and I can build that thing, and Frank maybe won't be the leader this time. So there are just interesting elements that emerged and made the game a lot more interactive than I expected. Not a kind of interaction that everybody necessarily will find welcome, because I know groups or players that don't like that. Oh, I'm gonna put it there. I'm gonna call this cube just because it messes with you. But some people really like that confrontational element, backstabbing or even front stabbing, because it's so obvious. I literally call the thing that is gonna annoy you. So there is that element. Overall, I liked it. I enjoyed it. Yes, it's simple. Yes, it's very linear. To me, that's a good thing, because sometimes you want to take a break from more complex designs. For some people in my group, this didn't work. For other people, did. So it's a game that, well, in its simplicity, in its linearity, will have its strength or weaknesses depending on what you're looking for. In general, I think it's a game that has several layers of interesting decisions, interesting level of interaction, and overall I found it a really fun game to play.